Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. It is me once again, screaming into the void of the internet. I was thinking about shooting this video when I was at work, but, mail manager homie gave me a ride, so that's just, more money saved. No need to worry about freaking goober money and all that good stuff, so that's cool. So I decided to shoot this here. So, I wanted to talk about something because, the other night, I had a nice conversation after work with two of my coworkers. One was a female manager, and the other was my younger coworker who kind of tends to ask me about stuff a lot, right? And so I kind of want to title this video the paradox of success and parental expectations, something along the lines of that, right? Because essentially, the kind of talk that we had went along the lines of this, right? What are our, I guess, expectations after, where we're working, like how long do we see ourselves working there? And it's not like an interview, it's just like, actual, workers just kind of talking about stuff that they would like to try and do in the future. And my male coworker who I mentioned before, the younger one, he's very into investing in stocks and stuff like that. So he said, eventually he wants to graduate college with some kind of business degree and get into financing and all that good stuff and try and get that money. My female manager, she wants to get into business as well, but for beauty stuff. She wants to do her own kind of nail shop and stuff like that. But for me, I kind of just openly admitted that so long as I've basically, because I mentioned something about robotics, but I obviously didn't share what kind of robotics, of course. I mentioned something about robotics, but I said, so long as I have a decent amount of money in terms of it's enough, I'm fine. And my male coworker mentioned oh, he just doesn't know about that. And I was like, well, it's all dependent on, what you want in life. And, the female manager mentioned that she felt like I was a very simple man. And not as an insult, but it's so long as you're happy. And I was like, pretty much, yeah. And the reason I say, well, if you have lofty goals, then that's why. And it's funny when I said that because it's they kind of just opened up about why they felt, that they had to have a certain amount of money. And it essentially goes back to the parents. My male coworker, younger one, he mentioned that because of how he grew up, and I'm not gonna share too much about his stuff, but I'll talk a little bit about it. In similar fashion, not exactly like me, but similar. His father put a lot of expectations on him to the point where it didn't really even feel like love anymore. And he worked so hard to appease those expectations for his dad. And his dad said, you better not become a failure, otherwise I feel like I just wasted all my money on him, and stuff like that. And he didn't say that jokingly, he meant that seriously. And it got so bad to the point that, I don't know if he didn't really say if his dad left or if it's just his mom. He's never really gone into detail, so I'm not gonna pretend like I know in there, but it's it's really frustrating to me that, it's not surprising to understand why the world is the way that it is over all these years when these are the people who are popping out kids, These are the people who are popping out kids because it's not like he comes from a place with a silver spoon in his mouth, because the truth of the matter is he's actually an immigrant and not an illegal one. He actually paid for his citizenship, all that good stuff. His family migrated to America. And in spite of that, because a lot of people like to say that, all these other countries, oh, there's so much community and unity and stuff like that. But that's really just person to person. That doesn't really apply to an entire group of people. And to hear, because listen, I've always said that, we need dads, we need fathers, just as much as you need moms. But unfortunately, we live in a freaking country where dads are shamed so bad to the extent that it's very hard to even find guys, with fathers and stuff like that. And it's such a shame to me when a guy does have a dad in his life and that's the kind of dad that you get. It's not about needing someone to coddle you, not by a long shot, but if you're going to put so much expectation on somebody, the least that you can do is acknowledge and reward the effort when it's paying off. And he mentioned that, to be honest, for as long as he worked that hard, his dad never once, said that he was proud of him. And that's effed up. And when he shared that, it kind of like ignited something in, I guess, my female manager, and she kind of mentioned about her parents and stuff like that. And she said, she tried to people please for her parents, and she was the straight A student, and, it's not like she ever felt like she deserved a reward after that, but it's like, no matter how overwhelmed that it would be to try and please them, for the most part, like, she didn't really feel like her parents ever really acknowledged her. Heck, even after she graduated high school, like, she said what they said to her immediately, like, not that long after she graduated, was, all right, start giving us $400 in rent, like, every month. And she said, whereas, like, other people, like, maybe bought their, like, kid a car or something like that. And it's not that she said she felt like she deserved a car. It's just that she wanted, some recognition. And I think that people forget that, listen, yes, they may be, like, growing up and stuff, but they're still your kids. They want recognition, and they don't even give their own kids recognition. They put all this pressure on them and have them shoot for the stars. But then when we try and hold parents accountable, what do they usually say? I did the best that I could. I'm not perfect. And my response to that, my rebuttal to that is, if you're not perfect, why did you expect it out of your children? Why did you expect that out of your kids? If you're not perfect and you do the best that you can, why are you assuming that your kid isn't? It's not hard to see why this world is the way that it is when these are the people who popped out kids. I'm not saying that my two coworkers are screwed up and stuff like that, but it's very easy to see that they are dealing with that stuff. They're dealing with that stuff. And people make it seem like the expectations that you place on parents to at least have, again, this is why I say what I say, like, I think that it should be people who are mentally capable and financially capable. And even then, you still gotta, like, check on them, dude, because it's not right what they're doing to those freaking kids, dude. And I didn't really share what, went in about me, but I just shared, hey, listen, like, so long as I've got enough money, even if I wasn't, like, making that much money, not that much money, I should say, like, even if I wasn't making, like, loads of money in the field that I want, which is, like, obviously, like I said, like, the robotics industry, right? As long as I was, like, making what I was making, and you guys know what I'm making, because, like I said, all I'm really concerned about is trying to give us an alternative, Not everyone's going to take it. Some people are probably going to say you're a creep, blah, 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 blah. Heck, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody actually wanted to, like, excommunicate me, because if I actually succeed with this, that is a lot of money that I am potentially taking out of the sexual industry, if you catch my drift. A lot of people have no idea just how many industries are manipulated by the fact that you can't keep your dick in line, and so you do whatever you can to try and please, people with titties, shall we say, and yeah. So I said, so long as I have enough, I'll be happy. And it's odd, I guess, hearing that, considering that I am technically the oldest one there, even though I look incredibly young. And I'm not saying that as some kind of vain compliment. I just mean, like, people kind of have to remember my age. Like, I'm actually older than my male manager. He's like the opposite of me. He's not like an old guy. He actually is younger than me, but his energy exudes like a lot of father vibes. And I don't mean this in some new age spirituality, like your vibrational energy frequency. I don't mean that crap. I mean the energy, the aura that he gives off is kind of like father. So I'm actually, I'm pleased that he's going to be a dad. So long as there's no miscarriage or, God forbid that she freaking aborts the kid or something. You never know with these freaking gals these days, so you never know. I'm glad he'll be that, because he actually owns a house, he has decent amounts of money, multiple cars, he's doing well. People like that, no problems with those people, He's got a good head on his shoulders. So yeah. But then you look at, again, back at my coworkers, and I'm like, yeah, what is up with all of this pressure that they put on you? And then when you try and return that about expectations that you might have had from them, best what we could, it's not hard to see why this generation turned out the way that it did. Because it's all about putting all this pressure on you. And I'm sure that a lot of us can attest to that. You can do anything, you can be anything, you need to try harder, blah, 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 blah. That's what a lot of boomers tell you, right? Like, you just need to do more. You just need to keep doing more. All of this pressure, but then when you throw it back at them, we did the best we could. You shouldn't throw it at us. It's all on you now. It's very interesting crap. And funnily enough, I had a little bit of a further conversation with my female manager, because my younger male coworker, like, he left because for some reason the ride was faster for him, even though I called mine earlier, funnily enough. So that's just kind of like how, taxi pretty much is, even though I know it's called Uber, blah, blah, blah. It's just taxi. Well, let's just be real. It's just the modern taxi. That's all. And so I stayed longer, and I kind of mentioned to her, similar to like what I mentioned here in the previous video, because she asked me about how's my new place? Because I mentioned that I was moving one time when I had to call out of work, and I said it was fine. And I said, to this day, I am having a hard time trusting peace. Because, like I said, I didn't go into detail. I shared a little bit of detail about my male coworker, but I tried to not share details about private lives and trauma, too much, unless it's around certain people. And usually they're not women. I'm just openly being honest. They're not women. Because I said, after you deal with a very lot of unpleasant problems all your life, when you finally have the ability to try and say the words, I think I'm happy, or everything's okay, or everything's good, you're scared that you don't really mean that. You're scared that you're just saying that as, the typical way to dismiss attention because you don't want to tell people how you're actually doing. And she kind of started crying, which I felt was kind of out of nowhere and stuff like that. I don't know. I think some people just have a very kind of like soft spot for other people. Because she did mention that she's a people person. And she just said that she's very happy that I have somewhere where I'm comfortable and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, I appreciate that, Because, funnily enough, guys, yes, I do have quite a bit of contempt for the ladies, if you catch my drift. But I do not deny that there are moments of good character. They have their moments, obviously. That doesn't mean that, obviously, I'm going to say air quotes, try and court her or something like that. That just means I acknowledge that she showed humanity, In a world where everyone is so much of a narcissist and an egotistical bastard, I do acknowledge those who show humanity. I acknowledge those who show decent character. Funnily enough, she shares a birthday month with me. So I am considering getting her a little something on her birthday. Not expensive, so please don't think I'm simping. But considering that she mentioned that her parents never really showed appreciation, and I think that that's effed up because, that's not the only thing I've ever heard of. That's not the only time I've heard of, parents, basically saying, okay, the moment you graduated, start paying, rent, $500 of rent and stuff. Yeah, I've heard crap like that, And it's very easy to see that this bleeds over into everything, maybe this is why so many of these people also don't want average. Think about it for a minute, man. When your parents were telling you that you need to work hard and blah, 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 and so let's just say that you put your nose to the millstone, you busted your balls, and you worked hard. Because people have been telling you so long that you have to succeed, you can't have average or anything, you can't be happy with the simple stuff. Maybe it was a form of brainwashing. That doesn't completely take away from accountability. Listen, I was told this too. I was told, like, that you need to work hard and all this stuff, but listen, I am fine with the simple stuff. I'm fine that I have this room. I'm fine that I've got clothes on my back, a roof over my head, and food in my belly. Maybe this isn't enough for a lot of people to be happy, but for me, considering how I've lived and what I had to go through, I'm content with this. Will I always be content with this? I don't know. But I can't really see how I'm going to be angry at any point, considering the fact that compared to what I was going through, that this may as well be a vacation. A vacation that I'm so scared to even say is real, because it does feel like a dream, guys. It feels like a dream, and I'm willing to admit that, hey, it's probably a form of emotional trauma. Like the emotional damage meme, yeah. It's a form of emotional trauma. You get so screwed over by life so much that you just can't trust certain things. And I don't know how long it might take for me to trust that everything's going to be okay. Maybe months, maybe years. I'm not going to say this as, oh, I'm depressed. I'm not depressed by any means. I think I am just scared to say I'm happy and mean it. Because I know what usually happens. And like I said, I can't help but feel like maybe this has had a part in why so many people are so unsatisfied with average. Everyone, Because listen, men are in on this trap too, especially like in this community. That's why they're talking about all this doomer, gloomer, relationship stuff. I'm sub 5, I'm this, blah, 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 blah. Listen, everyone is so obsessed with being exceptional. But here's the thing about exceptional. If everybody looked that way, do you think that would be what people are concerned about? Because a lot of people actually say, well, listen, it's actually a good thing that we're not getting chosen, because eventually only like the, so-called Chads and all of those genes will be the only thing left. I'm like, oh, listen. Hate to break it to you, but I can't say what I want to say, considering that last time I said this, community guidelines took down the video. But let us just say that XXs also have the ability to not be attractive. And unfortunately, for you, if you want to believe that way, there are still plenty of Chads that have no problem impregnating unattractive XXs. If you catch my drift. So that's not exactly going to fix anything. But what I'm trying to get at here is this, okay? Everyone is so obsessed with success and being above average that they forget that at the end of the day, most of life, most of the world, most of everything in this society is average. If everyone was a CEO, who would run a restaurant? If everyone is a engineer, who's a bus driver? If everyone's a, I don't know, like a freaking politician in some capacity, who picks up the trash? This world cannot work if everyone is exceptional. I acknowledge the desire to strive for improvement and betterment. Not improvement from like these freaking self-help gurus. I'm gonna show you how to be a real man. Just spend $700 on my course. I don't mean that. What I mean is if you see that there's something that you find inadequate on you, not because someone else feels as though it's inadequate, but you yourself feels it's inadequate, right? I desire to get a little bit bulkier. Not jacked, just toned, right? So I took a whole bunch of protein stuff, because I want to improve. Not for anyone but myself. I'm not doing this for female validation. I don't care about that stuff. I just want to be healthy. I want to be around here in good health, in good spirits. And so that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, But in the eyes of, say, gym bros, because my muscles are not, tightened to the absolute limit, I'm not healthy. You know that's how, like, those people see it, right? Like, everyone is so obsessed with, again, the absolute peak quality that they forget that nothing is wrong with being content with average. Because again, not everyone is going to be exceptional. And that's fine. Because listen, sure, I am impressed by people that can do exceptional things, but I'm also just as impressed with the fact that, I can go right now and get a pizza from someone who, you may say is at a wage gauge, and yeah, it sucks, but as a result of them being at that wage gauge, I have choice. As a result of that garbage man being a garbage man, I don't have to look at the freaking flies and possums and maggots and all kinds of stuff just riddling through the freaking trash. I don't have to look at that. I can call someone to do plumbing or something like if I need a plumbing. Because everyone is not at the highest possible echelons of society and status, because everyone can be average for the most part, it gives you choice. It's something that a lot of people tend to look over. But I guess in concluding this, I had a nice conversation with my coworkers, and I kind of just wanted to talk about that a little bit. And thinking about that, it's very easy to see why this world, this generation, is so screwed. Because this constant pressure that was just forced on us from a young age, for no reason, when you really think about it. Because these same people, what did they really turn out into, Well, I need you to be better, yes. But they're still your kids. They're your kids first. And you should recognize the hard work that your kids do, because, by God, if you're an adult, you should understand that when you don't feel recognized, that doesn't feel good. So why didn't you do that for your children? Why didn't you make sure that they felt recognized? I don't know, man. It's just really odd to me. I don't know why people don't think like this. I don't know. But, I think I'm going to end it here, boys. As always, I thank you guys for listening. I hope that you guys are doing well. And, if you have anything to add to this, let me know. Because that conversation was rather enlightening, so I'm sure that you might have pretty enlightening material to share as well, if you so desire to share it. Thank you, as always, for watching. God bless. I'll see you next time.